Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Falcioni, the editor of HopNews.com. This Friday, today, first let me say, sorry about being a little late. Sometimes we have a few things we have to take care of technically because this is not Channel 4. We don't have a huge crew here. But we do have Eric Montville manning the direction and the cameras and so forth. So I'd like to introduce John Collins, a photographer that you have seen before, or you've seen his work before on HopNews.com, and you may know him because he knows an awful lot of people in town, and he's given an awful lot. John, thank you so much for being here this evening. I know we're going to show some of your stuff. Do you know what is coming up first?
I do. We're starting with a few examples of different types of photography that are very popular and most popular to me. And I wanted to thank you very much for the invitation to be with you tonight and for supporting and promoting my photography for around 10 years. I started picking up a camera back in the mid to late 1960s, and it's been a real passion of mine for over 40 years. And because I was asked to travel in a number of work related positions,
Mm-hmm.
I also got to see a few places that are not on the normal beaten path, but did get to travel quite a bit in those 40
And you're
years.
retired. A young man like yourself is retired already.
I am, and enjoying traveling now for photography. And again, it's just a real passion and something I enjoy. And thank you for.
Occasionally, you're very welcome, by the way. Occasionally, your wife, Diane, goes along.
She does. Our last trip together, Diane met me last September in Ireland on my way back from a trip to Africa in August with David Lloyd. David was Wildlife Photographer of the Year a few years ago. That's worldwide. And I went on a major photo tour with him to Kenya, and I'll be with David again next November in Uganda. So Diane does come out, and we get to see some fairly interesting and exotic places together.
Fantastic. And I just want to mention that the cameras. I want you to know that's a two shot. I'm on the one shot right now. Eric has me on my camera. That's your camera.
Oh, great! Thank you.
This is, and sorry I didn't go over this before. And this is the two shot. When we're both on, that's the camera that we want to talk to. If you're the only one on the shot, you use your camera and I use my camera. If we want to speak to the audience,
Perfect. Thank you.
and I want the audience to know that a lot of it, what we do is restricted by the technology we have available, which we must have spent a couple $1,000s on, and that is not a lot to spend on broadcast technology. So, and it's the way we do it. So we're restricted in what we can do. And I'm mentioning that because we're gonna once we start with the photos, we're probably not going to come back until the end, and that's just the way it is because of all the photos that you have to go from this photo. You have to go past 50 others all the way to the beginning to be able to put one of us on camera. So we're going to be gone, but you'll hear us. And I love to comment on some of John's photos, and he's gonna take the main commentary, and he's going to explain just what we're all looking at and other things about the photos. So I think we're going to get started now. And do you know the first one we're going to see?
I do. It's a macro picture of a very fat bumblebee enjoying a snack. And again, this is called macro photography, and it's one that I happen to embrace. It is looking at the world of the very small in a very big way. And certainly, high resolution cameras today, you have iPhones, Android phones in the 15, 16 megapixel range. In DLSRs, you have camera bodies now out of the box at 50 megapixel. and you put a very high-end telephoto or macro lens on that camera. And as you can see from this picture, you can see individual hairs on a bee that is on a flower.
If I may just point out that there should be on the player, if you're watching live, there should be like a double arrow, I think it is, on the player, which allows you to view these photos full screen. In fact, view the whole presentation full screen. It'll pop out of your browser and into the full screen presentation. Now, what's also going to happen is this is going to be archived on our YouTube site about half hour after we're done. So you might be watching on our YouTube site. That also allows for a full screen presentation, and these photos really look good when they're enlarged. They don't break down. John's done a great job with these.
Thank you. And a lot of that, or all of that, is due to the what's capable today with modern photography equipment. I'm currently shooting with 2 camera bodies, and they're both over 20 megapixel.
Now, who's this? What is this girl? What is she?
The next picture is a young lady at a concert that I was at a few years ago. This is a candid portrait. She did not see me taking the picture, which from a photographer's standpoint gives you a very relaxed face, if you will. Certainly people who know they're on camera may look or act a little bit differently. She's just entered the concert place outside and walked up to a bubble machine, and I was really taken by her eyes, the beauty of her skin, and the braids that she's wearing. And I shot a series of pictures of her again in Cameo, and as soon as I saw in the 3x3 viewfinder that several of them were of a very high quality, of course I went to her parents, introduced myself, and gave them my card, and I subsequently sent them copies so they could do some prints.
John, I'd like to point out that's very important in a portrait, is the eyes, and I know that's what I go for. That's the #1 thing. Now, I see some eyes on the upcoming photo too.
That is why I included this as part of what I enjoy in photography. Photography is just like music, just like fashion. It never ends. There's always another subject, another scene, different lighting, different elements in a picture. This was on the photo safari with David Lloyd. This is in Kenya in the savannah, and this is a very young leopard, and this was first shot of the morning, or first seen in the morning. This is probably 7 a.m. In Africa, and we know it's early because you can see the low light on the animal's chest. The eyes, I always try to put a spot focus or individual focus point on the eye, and in this case the eye is clear, and it's crystal clear with beautiful morning light. So portraiture, excuse me, can be people, it can be animals, and I think it really is a way of in modern camera equipment with a high resolution sensor. I shot this with a full frame camera, which really brings out contrast, beautiful color, and that's why I thought I would include this in the presentation.
Well, it's a great shot. It's a wonderful shot. Now, what is that tree called? Is that a Joshua tree?
That is a Joshua tree. As part of my business travel, I was often in California, and I would stay for a weekend, just grab a rental car, and I did on several occasions get to go out to the desert, which any time of the year you can always find beautiful subjects. And Joshua trees themselves, while beautiful, are hard to photograph. They have a lot of limbs, and they tend to blend in with the rest of the trees in Joshua Tree National Forest. This is a single tree at the very highest point in the park, which is called Keys Rock, and I waited till the sun had set to catch a single silhouette, if you will, with the sunset toward Los Angeles, facing west, of course.
You know, it reminds me of an Eagles album.
The Eagles actually did all of their photography for their first album with a man who I met in November down at the Narrows in Fall River, Henry Diltz. shot the much of the album that was done for the Eagles in Joshua Tree.
And America. Been through the desert on a horse.
On a horse with no name.
Okay, let's look at the next cavernous fissure or whatever. What is that?
Actually another type of landscape photography. This is a slot canyon where you have a single beam of light coming in through the roof. This is on Navajo land in Page, Arizona, in a site owned by Lionel Big Thumb and his family. And I took a guided tour, and the guides were very good about allowing us to set up tripods. We literally only had a minute at each scene. So I preset my camera the night before, locked everything down, and just carried the tripod with a remote shutter release.
Do you see the Star of the Planet of the Apes on the right? Looks like the left side of his face. You see it? The eye, the nose,
I do,
the mouth.
And that is part of my love of photography is you never know what light is going to show. And in this case, we have the sandstone of the canyon being illuminated orange, but there's a blue puff, and that blue puff is actually a shadow. The Navajo guides will toss some sand in the air, so the light beams are actually brought out by the dust and debris in the air.
Now, is that Jerusalem on the left, or is that local? Is that California?
That is actually one of my favorites. Photographers, I have many terabyte of saved photos over the years stored and also backed up, so I never lose them. And this is actually a scene out our hotel window. Diane and I were on vacation in Italy, and this is the top of the mountain in Assisi, Italy, St. Francis of Assisi, if you will. That's the cathedral, which is centuries old, and I just thought it was another non-typical landscape. You've got a couple of different elements. You're on a hillside shooting after the sun is down into some beautiful clouds and sky, but we're still able to capture the age of an ancient building in the foreground.
Well, it's very nice muted light, and I love the way the tones are all muted and soft, and so you do get that from a muted sky. But wow, is that bright, that next one coming up?
This one is in contrast to the cathedral in Assisi. This is one of the main canals in an island setting near Venice. There are several other islands in the lagoon, and this is a lesser known island called Burano. And every home on the canal is painted a different color, so when the fishermen come home after dark, they can actually find their own home. And you've got a number of different elements in a street scene, which is akin to another form of landscape photography. But I certainly like the color pop and the setting quite a bit.
Well, I'll tell you, I could have used that as a kid, finding my way home. You get on the street, well, which house is mine? Well, not you. I'm sure you didn't have that experience, but it would have been really good when I was younger and out every night having a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And those kids are having a lot of fun, aren't they?
They are.
Next slide.
The next form of photography that I certainly enjoy, and much of which that I've shared with you on Hop News over a decade. These are kids down in Sandwich, Mass during the summer. There are posted signs everywhere on the boardwalk in Sandwich, do not jump, because there's passing boats underneath. And I happened to be down there with Diane last summer and caught these kids at the apex of their jump into the water beneath the bridge.
Is that a yellow sign?
That is a yellow sign.
Do you know what that says?
It says do not jump.
Excellent. Well, I wish we had we can't see that from where we are, but
there's no reason photography can't be fun.
That's right. I used to go up the common and try to get the people with the dogs that are walking them illegally past the sign that says no dogs on the common. So I know what you're talking about. Now, what's this guy doing on the left?
Again, action and adventure. I tend to not shoot a lot of static scenes. I do shoot some landscape. I do shoot some portrait. My favorite is action and adventure, if you will. And this gentleman is flying in a hang glider. He has lifted off from the Torrey Pines glider port 900 feet above Black's Beach in San Diego.
Now, when you call it a glider, is it like a chute?
It is a kite, if you
kite,
will. It's
okay.
a wing, and in Torrey Pines is one of the toughest places to fly in the country, and I think probably in the world, but they get the benefit of the thermals off the beach. All that hot air creates an uplift. Plus, in San Diego, you've got some wind off the Pacific. And as in many cases where I am out with a long lens, which is easy to spot, he saw me doing photography from a concrete stand that was actually out over the beach, again, 900 feet up. And he circled me multiple times while I took his picture. And I actually won a photo contest at the glider port.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is he sitting on a leather commode or something?
Yeah, he's
looks like he's well, that's okay.
Great question.
Maybe
he is in a leather bundle, almost like a sleeping bag. Tucks his feet under him, and like a parachute is controlled by two straps going left or right. He can control the angle of the wing, and they can literally stay up for hours. So,
this next shot was on Hop News recently.
It was.
And that's one of my favorite action shots that you've taken, and there's a reason for it. We've got all kinds of great angles there. I mean, his right foot is making a 45-degree angle, or however you're looking at, 120-degree angle maybe, or 130, whatever it is, across the screen. And he's in some peak action. There's just so much in this that's likable.
Thank you. The location is called the 520 Slick, and it's off Route 520 in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And I sent this to you the day after I took it because,
Well, thank you.
like anything else, if it's good, you want to share it. If someone writes a great song, what value is it if it's unheard? So I thought this was a pretty well composed action shot. I was actually photographing the windsurfers, or kite surfers, I should say. There's a large kite.
Is that what's coming up next?
There's a large, yes.
Over the sun?
Yep, there's a large kite attached to kite boarders, and the wind is strong enough that it actually lifts them out of the water. So this is the same scene, the 520 Slick, only a year before.
Oh.
And this is a young fellow named Patrick Nickerson. As always, when they see me, or see a photographer, I should say, they like to perform. And in the case of the prior picture, I waded out into the river waist deep and let them come to me.
I love the illusion too that he's actually flying over the sun.
Yep, and I was there to photograph sunset, and I happened to be there on a windy day. Put two and two together, and again I went to the end of a dock to photograph this, and I really was excited when I saw the result. Had him literally over the sun just before it set.
And people, you want to be reminded, please, especially if you've just joined us, that you can watch this in full screen on your computer or wherever you're watching it. You can, if it's YouTube, there's a choice that you can make to make it full screen. If you're watching it live, I think there's a double arrow on our little display that'll open it up to a full screen. So we have another shot coming up that's interesting.
Yep, we spoke about macro photography, making the small world large, and we talked about portraiture, both people and animals, and we saw a few examples of landscapes. And this is what I would consider a landscape. It's also a piece of history. This is the Battle of Bunker Hill last year, reenacted in New Hampshire. Of course, it's difficult to reenact something so large in downtown Boston, so they go outside to a location in New Hampshire. So you've got the British, who have taken a few casualties, moving uphill toward some entrenched colonials on top of the hill. But other than stating we're at the scene, we're at the reenactment, it doesn't really have a lot of impact. It's more informational, more postcardish, if you will. By contrast, with a long lens and some close-up, we can get down to an individual scene and an individual.
And that's what's coming up next.
That is correct. Make it a bit more interesting with an individual soldier from Cherry's company in New Hampshire reaching into his cartridge box while the British officers are at the flag and they're defended by several troops in front of them. We've got the added emotion of a low-level shot. I'm actually on the ground shooting at the same level, and that's my preferred way of shooting wildlife and shooting close-up
On your elbows?
On my elbows on the ground.
That's how you got the next one too.
Gives you a great perspective. And the next one is the same scene, except now I've changed from a spot focus on the Cherry soldier to a spot focus on the British officers. And this really brings out the fog of war, the smoke, and I think makes for the most interesting photo.
And I like that next one that's coming up of the soldier appears to be firing his weapon at you.
Yep, the British musket is shot from another low angle on my elbows, only in this case I am behind a colonial line and I waited for an individual British soldier to load and fire.
Now how long does that smoke stay up like that?
Probably 5-6 seconds.
Wow, that's incredible.
Less on a windy day.
Yeah.
So
we don't see that on Memorial Day in this town.
No, we don't.
They don't have anywhere near that amount of smoke.
Again, this is in Danvers at an event that was just held last week. It's an annual event. But I shot this at high speed. One of my cameras takes 7 frames a second.
Wow, that's incredible.
So you can fire off a series as you see him raise his weapon. You can fire off a series and then pick the one that has the composition.
Now, there's a similar one coming up that is from another angle.
Yeah, this is at Old Sturbridge Village. I'm a member, and I've actually done some work for Old Sturbridge Village. Only 40 minutes from here, and they have an annual event called Redcoats and Rebels, and this is actually 3 British officers, 2 with rifled muskets, which are very loud, by the way, and this is my favorite shot of all of the thousands of Revolutionary War shots that I've taken. Don is the gentleman's name in the foreground. He's wearing an original bearskin hat with beaver pelt leather, and he is outfitted as a British officer would have been in the 1700s.
Now, may I ask, are these folks wearing the OSHA mandated ear protection?
Some of them do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. In some of the pictures where the
well, we have a close-up coming up, so
yep.
we can see if he's wearing any, probably.
Yeah, this is John is a well-known reenactor who I see at both Revolutionary War and World War II events. And John here is dressed as a British general commanding troops in Rhode Island at the Nathaniel Greene Homestead, which has a reenactment annually. And this is one of my favorite portraits. It shows beautiful gold epaulets on the breast. It shows a beautiful feather of the hat, and the lighting on his face, because his face is in the shade, is as close to perfect, I think, as you could get. But it's a static shot. Again, it's in cameo. I just happened to catch him while he was posed in this direction. I waited for him to move, and in the next picture, we add the element of movement. He is now rearing his horse. Front hooves are off the ground. He is still in frame, but if you look at the horse's eye, it's directly at the lens. The horse has spotted me and spotted the camera. So another.
So what you mean is he's like hamming it up, showing off.
A little bit, yeah. Horses
Yeah.
know when cameras are around, and this one is rearing and looking right at the camera.
Now,
so we've added an element of motion to it.
Is he in the left in the next shot too? Is that him?
He is.
The same person?
Yeah, John, and this is Dave on the right. He is dressed as Nathaniel Greene, and we've added a second horse. We've added circular motion. You can see the tails are swishing, and they're actually engaged.
Are there ever any? Excuse me for interrupting.
No problem.
I still want to be a part of this. But do you ever have any horse accidents? I mean, like cars. I mean, they look like they're crashing together.
They are circling. Dave and John work together quite a bit, and they're going to be at the Massachusetts Military History Expo in May in Orange in World War II attire.
Is that them in the next frame?
I don't have a picture of them together in World War II, but the next frame is from the Massachusetts Military History Expo, which will be May 20th and 21st at Orange Airport. I will be there doing photography for Dan Eaton and his group of organizers, and it's one of the largest World War II events in Massachusetts.
No, that's black and white. I see the next one is color.
In color. I chose black and white for starters because if it looks better in black and white, I tend to leave it in black and white. But in this case, you have British paratroopers approaching a German fixed position, but the colors are muted. Black and white certainly was 99% of the photography in World War II was black and white, but I left this one color just because I thought the colors were muted enough not to overwhelm the scene. Mm-hmm. But in the next picture, you'll see we add some pretty dramatic color back.
Oh.
This is at the same event, which allows you to purchase time on a flamethrower, and for folks who like arms and armor, you have a soldier here firing a flamethrower at an improvised bunker. They've put a few logs in that are definitely going to burn. Plenty of fire safety equipment around.
So those logs kind of represent people, like the enemy.
That would represent, Robert, a bunker that enemy soldiers might be entrenched in, and certainly on Okinawa, Iwo Jima, many of the islands in the Pacific, flamethrowers were frequently used literally to get people to evacuate fixed positions. From a photographic standpoint, I could have done this in color and had green and maintained the black smoke, but just by way of demonstration, one of the beauties of Photoshop is you can take a picture in black and white and then adjust it to be color only in the hot spots. His right boot is red. The ground before the bunker is red.
Now, you said you can take a picture in black and white, but this was originally color, wasn't it?
This was originally color, converted to black and white, and then I reconverted the flame in Photoshop to be its original orange and red color.
Now, why did you take the next photo in black and white?
This was an event in January in Maine at the Wiscasset and Farmington Railway Museum. I was there for 2 days. The first thing you see on the right is Engine 9 is a narrow gauge, not a wide gauge standard train, but a narrow gauge engine with the engineer leaning out and the fireman to the right just getting ready to board.
Was it a coal-fired steam locomotive?
It is coal-fired steam, and this kind of event to me is just perfect for black and white photography because of the 1930s Ford hay wagon on the left. That's an original Ford that was parked for the event, and in that one, black and white, to me, just says 1930s photography.
Oh, it lends to, right, it lends to the era. Plus, if you can't see the driver of that car very well, but I'm imagining myself inside that truck trying to beat the train to the crossing.
Great visual.
If you don't mind, I'm going to do that.
That's great.
And then the next one reminds me of the movie Stand By Me.
Yes.
Where the train came from. I wonder if they even used one of those types of trains.
Yeah, that was a Stephen King, early Stephen King, about a boy who was hit by a train and kids who went out to locate him. This is a narrow gauge. This is train engine number 9 again. I did this one in color just because we could keep a little bit of blue in the sky, a little bit of green in the trees, but I like the brown contrast with the snow on the ground and especially the smoke, and that's what steam to me is all about, smoke. So I do look occasionally for steam engine events, and what they'll do, Robert, is drop photographers off, back up, and then ride toward you.
Is there any trestle nearby?
I
It almost
actually,
looks like there's a drop off on as we face
on
the
another
right.
part of the line on the second day, we did some trestle photography.
Uh-huh.
And I have to say that scene and that scenery, since I could get down below the train level and shoot up
Mhm.
into the smoke, was pretty effective.
Good. That looks great. And this next one, my goodness, this also is old school technology.
It is a schooner called Columbia. It's a new boat. It's a recreation of the original 1900s Columbia. And I've been in touch with Carl, who was the captain of Columbia. He saw some of my pictures from the Gloucester schooner races.
Mhm.
I've gone the last 5 or 6 years.
And you've been good enough to share some of those with us.
I have.
Some of them.
Again, it just makes for a real New England flavor to be on the water in early September. This is a Labor Day event again this year. And when Captain Carl saw my posting on the Gloucester Schooner Race site, he requested to use my photography in his advertising,
Oh, wonderful.
which of course I granted permission, and he sent me a swag bag of hats and shirts, which I appreciate. This is Columbia passing the stern of the boat that I'm on, which is called Liberty Clipper, and I've already bought a ticket for this year's race. And the wind on this day last year, September 2016, was approaching 20 knots. So this Columbia was just flying through the water.
Oh, it has to be good. It looks like it's heading for your tail.
It passed right
What do you
behind
call
us.
it? What do you call it?
Your
The bow is
stern,
the front.
your stern.
The stern is the rear.
It passed us on the stern
Mhm.
to the right of this picture, to the left of us, and I guarantee you it was out of sight very quickly.
I'll bet. Look
It's
at
it's
that
built
thing.
for racing, and I just saw a post from Captain Carl yesterday, and they're heading over to Antigua for a race over the next week or two. So all of these are action adventure type of shots. We've had a series of different events and different scenes, each of which can have an element that's great for photography.
Where do you find a moose, though?
This is actually a bull elk.
Oh, it's an elk, sorry.
People who follow elk will tell you that Pennsylvania in the Allegheny Mountains, where this was taken in a little town called Benezet, hosts the largest elk herd in the southern 48 states. These were transplanted in the 1930s from Colorado. Most of the wild elk, of course, were killed in the east for food or just in clearing forests and fields. So the folks at home that are in widescreen view of this and large screen, there's actually snow falling. This was I want to say last November or December. And he was just out in the field, and I was photographing him with a long lens.
Was he disappointed you were there?
No, he actually liked to pose, and I gave him my card.
That's a
So
good one.
we're back to a bit of wildlife
Well,
photography.
now you're catching on. Okay. So I see, now I call that one a moose, and it's an elk. It looks like a whale that we're going to see
This
next.
looks like a big pickle, but it's actually, that is a humpback whale right here in Massachusetts on Stellwagen Bank off Cape Cod. And this was also last summer. I will go on probably 4 or 5 whale watches a year. And the family keeps giving me gift certificates for Christmas, which I appreciate.
Oh, good.
And we actually had 5 humpback whales breach, one after the other. And like photographing lightning, whales and breaches are hard to predict where they're going to be. I just, in this case, happened to be pointed in the right direction and correctly focused to get this one
That's wonderful.
as a breach. So now we're back to looking at wildlife
Too
photography.
bad they can't talk.
Well,
What a tale they would tell.
what a tale they would tell.
Right. And now I see we're in Jurassic Park next.
Yes.
Ah!
You were kind enough to post this one last week. I have a spot in Florida that I enjoy, and I'm just back from photographing egrets and herons and spoonbills in central Florida, and came across an egret nest. And I post my photos also on National Geographic has a personal website called Your Shot, and their editors look at literally thousands and thousands
And
of
out of
pictures.
25, they picked yours as one of the top 25
Yep.
of the month or
Well,
the
actually,
year,
it
or-
was for the week last
Uh-huh.
week
Oh,
of
great.
probably millions of pictures that are posted worldwide on Your Shot. This made the top 25 wild bird photos for the week.
It reminds me of that bird in Jurassic Park that kind of like
Raptor bird,
yeah,
Velociraptor.
And what's his name there?
Newman
was in the Jeep, and
Yep.
and this thing like ripped him apart. You
Well-
couldn't see that, but
One of the key elements of Jurassic Park, in addition to cloning, was are birds descended from dinosaurs?
right, are they?
And a look at that picture, you'd have to think they were given head shape,
Right.
feathers,
Ah.
and since the movie in China, they've discovered raptor fossils that clearly show feathers.
Wow, isn't that fantastic? And they did such a great job with dynamite and rocketry.
That's right.
But now, am I right about the mooses now? Because they look like bull ones coming
These
up.
are a pair of sibling moose, and this is in the Nez Perce River. Just a few more shots of wildlife, and certainly one of the best places to do wildlife photography in the U.S. is Yellowstone. I was shooting, believe it or not, bird life along the Nez Perce River when out of the forest came two bull moose, and it was a hot summer day.
I wish I had my guitar in my hands because that would be a great song.
Yes.
I was shooting the birds when the moose popped out.
The moose popped out, and they were in no hurry. They were enjoying, it was probably 90 degrees that day. They were enjoying a cool walk, so I got to take literally several hundred pictures of them. And again, a place for, you won't be disappointed if you enjoy the outdoors, hiking, and wildlife if you go to a place like Yellowstone. And moose aren't the only thing that are in Yellowstone.
Oh, I guess
Park.
not. Now, this next guy, how close did he get to you, or did you go to him?
No, great question. I was actually standing next to a ranger, so I did not get closer than standing next to the ranger, since the rule for bears is 100 yards.
Wow.
So this is shot and cropped of a very young black bear nibbling on the top of a wildflower.
And that's Yellowstone?
That is Yellowstone.
So
National
black
Park.
bears are all the way out there, too?
The black
Because
bears.
those are the ones we have around here, right?
Yep.
The black bears.
Yeah, we have black bears. Yellowstone is probably more famous for grizzlies, and I did not include them in this presentation, but I did have some safe encounters with grizzly bears also.
Wow.
And there's all kinds of wildlife in Yellowstone, including bison, which there were millions and millions of bison in the U.S., and the largest herd now is in Yellowstone. And
Is that what's next? Is that a bison?
that is
Or
the
buffalo.
bison, buffalo, same animal.
Huh?
But in this case, we're showing that wildlife photography can be fun
Mm-hmm.
because I'm stopped in traffic because there's two bison up ahead
Uh-huh.
blocking the road.
And this guy's going to attack you from the rear.
He's crossing the road behind me. I had my short lens, thankfully, on a camera body on the seat next to me because you never know what you're going to see and you have to be ready to shoot.
He's flanking you, yeah.
So I got a shot of him in the rearview mirror, which fortunately came out focused. And again, photography is always fun and interesting, as the very next shot will show.
Well, let me ask about the bison for a moment,
Please.
if I may. Is that mange on him?
That's their natural coat.
Okay, so he's not shedding or anything.
No,
It's just
he
the
is
way
not
looks?
shedding. And if you recall, one of the reasons buffalo were slaughtered were for their skins for clothing.
Yeah.
The Native Americans would use that for covering for their tents and teepees,
Uh-huh.
and also for outerwear, if you
Clothing,
will.
sure, yeah.
Yep. So they would eat certain parts of the buffalo. They basically used every part of the buffalo.
Isn't that wonderful? And I think that what killed most of them was the railroads and the railroad people.
Yeah,
To
they
get them out of the way.
certainly cleared a path through the West.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is that a prairie dog?
that is a
Next.
good eye. That is a prairie dog, and again, showing that photography can be amusing. On the shot that I showed earlier of the single Joshua Tree in Joshua Tree National Monument,
Uh-huh.
I was on my way through the park driving probably, I think the speed limit there is 25 or 30
A
miles
little
an
too
hour.
fast, but all right.
When I stopped, this little guy was standing right on the curb as you see him,
Wow.
and he was showing me his meal.
Isn't that wonderful?
Look,
Did he want to share it with you?
I
Or?
didn't have salad dressing or anything like that with
Yeah.
me, but he stood there as long as I was interested in watching him, and he even let me take a picture out the
They're
open,
very social animals.
out the open car window. So
Is it
there's
social or sociable?
a sociable.
Sociable. They really are.
Planters was the sociable peanut.
We went up to a friend of mine and I went up to Benson's Wild Animal Farm, which had a different name on its last day of opening. And we went up there to do a story and take some photos. There had to be about 20 of those little guys all looking at us.
Yep. Well,
I'm
this
very
was the
impressed.
only one I've ever seen that offered me food.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And then there are also, in the western United States, are some of the rarest animals found on the continent. This next photo coming up is at the south rim of the Grand Canyon. I hiked to the bottom 2 years in a row. The first year I went from the south rim to the bottom and back up over 3 days,
Wow.
which was about 19 hours of hiking.
Mm.
The second year I went rim to rim from the north to the south, which took 27 hours. And while visiting, we got to see California condors.
Oh, is that what that is?
And at one point there were only 60 left
Oh,
in the world.
goodness.
And through protection, through the Endangered Species Act and other protections,
Mhm.
they are rebounding very well. So that is a very rare bird. And he's not flapping his wings, he's riding those thermals
Yeah.
again on a summer day over the Grand Canyon.
And you know, for those who can't afford the airfare out there, don't have the time to take the train, you can see a lot of hawks at Mount Wachusett that will ride the thermals up the side of the mountain and up above the mountain, as well as gliders from Spencer. Is it Spencer Airport? out
Spencer,
there?
yeah.
And other types of flying things and machines. So,
Well, you'll see at the end of the presentation, I finish with a few shots that are my favorite sites around New England. Just for the next minute or so, let's go to Africa.
alrighty.
This next photograph is my first night in the Masai Mara with David Lloyd and 5 other photographers on an 8-day photo safari. We were in 2 jeeps for 8 straight days doing nothing but photographing wildlife. And this is obviously sunset, and you have the swish of a giraffe's tail captured in the setting sun.
Thank you for
And,
pointing out what that is.
Yep, just the swish of a tail as he walks off to the sunset. In other pictures, Robert, you would see he then took a right and walked over and reached up and ate from an acacia tree,
Ah,
which was beautiful and interesting.
and they're known for doing that, I'm sure.
Those trees don't have a lot of low leaves left on
What
them.
is that thing in the next picture?
Well,
It's
this is-
jumping into water like haphazardly.
This is the reason for the trip with David, was to photograph the Great Migration from Tanzania in the south across Kenya. The wildebeest, giraffe, and antelope primarily migrate, and over 1.2 million animals in the migration have to cross the Mara River, which is full of Nile crocodiles.
Ooh.
So this is an action shot, again, wildlife, a little bit of action for interest, showing wildebeest that are panicked. They do this annually. They know the crocodiles are looking for a meal, and they surge forward as groups.
Mm-hmm.
And this is at dusk. They usually cross toward the evening.
Does that help them being in a group?
It does. It's almost like any other scene of panic. Anyone but me, if you will. They tend to cross in big bunches. And in the 8 days we were there, we saw 6 different crossings. And there are, not in this picture, but in some of the other photography,
What's in the next one? Who are those guys?
you can actually see the crocodiles. This is a static shot, but one I thought that was particularly telling of 2 sibling young leopards in a static shot. They've just emerged and kind of sat out in morning sun that is just coming up in a wooded area, but in front of them is all savanna grass, and they're getting ready to hunt, get their first meal of
They
the
look
day.
like they're hunting now, don't they?
Yeah, they have their eye on something, and the hunting behavior, which we got to see a lot of, and we actually saw a lioness on a hunt. She was unsuccessful, but it's pretty
What
amazing
animals
to
are
see.
those? Did you say leopard?
Those are leopards.
Is that a leopard coming up?
No, the next one
A
coming
cheetah?
up. The next one coming up is Malika, the Maasai guides that live in the village near Entum Camp where we stayed.
Yeah.
Name the animals, and
Wow.
this is she's at least a two-time mom. This is her current litter of two, which are now old enough. This was August of last year. They're now big enough that they're on their own and
Wow.
hunting, so they grow quickly. But here you have, there's a second cub facing the other way.
The guy looks a little, that one tortoise looks a little like Ted Koppel. I'm looking, is that Ted Koppel?
And animals
Maybe I need new glasses.
can have a resemblance. The thing I love about it is look at the cub's feet and body position. It's identical to her mom's.
In the next one, what's that thing eating?
Well, this is a leopard. We spotted this leopard early in the morning looking up a tree. And then we got a call on the walkie-talkie that there was a large male lion nearby, so we zipped off to photograph it. And when we came back, we noticed that the leopard had dragged a wildebeest into a tree.
Wow.
Wildebeest can weigh hundreds of pounds. Leopards are very strong, and they
guess
try
so.
to hide their kills from other predators. So I'm sitting in the Jeep, actually standing in the Jeep, shooting up with a long lens. And you can see its canines, its eyes are open, and like being at McDonald's, it's enjoying a McRib lunch.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm glad that you weren't too close.
No, and I didn't want to...
I'm thinking, oh my God, John, are you kidding me? You're that close to that thing, that leopard?
We were far enough back that if it fell out of the tree, it would not
have fallen into the Jeep? Or
would not have
wherever you
fallen
drive.
into the Jeep.
Yeah.
And I also put this picture up because it does not show the whole circle of life of an animal consuming another animal.
You know,
But
are you mad about that? Are you mad about my
It's the circle of life.
Are you mad about my snapping turtle eating the swan?
No, everything.
Or the goose?
Everything has to eat.
Did you ever see that?
I did.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons I learned in Africa is it's kill or be killed. You either have to be fast like a cheetah, big like an elephant, or stealthy like lions and leopards to survive.
Oh, smart like you and I.
There you go.
And this next one looks like someone's going to get
well,
hurt.
now we're going big. We were very fortunate on one of our last evening drives. We did 2 large drives a day, one in the morning, one late in the afternoon. You don't want to be out in 90-degree heat and the glare of an African sunlight at the height of the day because you're literally on the equator. But this is a pair of young elephant bulls just sparring and playing.
Oh.
But they battled for probably 15 or 20 minutes.
Wow.
Learning technique and
Someone's
sizing
gonna
each other up.
Someone's going to poke an eye out.
Absolutely.
And I see in this next photo, you're all going to Agway to get some fertilizer or something?
This is leaving for the airport.
Sorry.
And this is a photo on the left in the white khaki. That's David Lloyd. Again, wildlife photographer of the year a few years back.
By whom?
Anointed
by whom?
It was World Wildlife Photographer of the Year
Ah.
from London. He's a Kiwi based in London, and I'm going back to Africa with David next year.
Now, he's not... Did you say David Lloyd Webber? Wasn't he some sort of
Andrew Lloyd
musician?
Webber. Andrew Lloyd Webber
yeah.
Writes musicals. This is David Lloyd at davidlloyd.net.
Is he a musician too?
He is not. He
Like
is
his,
he's running multiple safaris in Africa, India, and next year I'm going to Uganda to sit with the mountain gorillas. With him.
Yeah. You know, you got to be careful about that stuff.
It's the
My
rangers.
goodness.
The rangers will be ever present. Let's
Yeah.
take a look at some local photography here in New England. Boston is a beautiful city. It's why we live here. And this is shot from the 8th or 9th story of the Hyatt at the airport. On a windy night as a lone tug makes its way back to the city.
That's another song. You've got all these songs in your head, these poetic photos.
The sun has set, the lights are coming up on the city, and you can see how hard the wind is blowing from the north.
You know what? That would be great if like you had that moving art, and you put it on the wall, and the lights blinked
Yep.
in the skyscrapers.
Yep.
I'm just
Like the
thinking.
diner with Marilyn Monroe and James Dean with the lighting in the background.
I don't know that shot.
Yep.
I didn't see that
Well,
one.
they do some light up.
I saw the one with the
light up
with
posters.
where the air came up through the register on the
That's right.
sidewalk. That was a fantastic.
The next
shot.
picture shows downtown Boston, and we've got a full rainbow. I didn't have enough wide lens. This was shot with a 24 millimeter wide lens. But another landscape shot from the top of the Prudential Center.
And what is that building? Is that
That's the Hancock Tower. That's the new Hancock
Did
Tower.
they paint it black since I've seen
No,
it?
I had to tweak to get the rainbow in, so I turned down the whites quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But to get the effect of the rainbow over the city of Boston, there's plenty of great photography here in New England.
Isn't there?
And
Yeah.
including in our own hometown. The next picture, we are graced with an annual event called the Boston Marathon, which starts a block from where we are tonight. And this is Meb Kalefi leaving. Meb is in the blue shorts and red top to the left, and he was the last American winner of the Boston Marathon.
You know, that reminds me, we're going to be, Pop News will be at the Elmwood when the Kenyans show up Thursday before them. I think it's Thursday before the marathon. And we're going to be capturing some stuff inside. It's a raucous time. Between now and then, the kids will be studying about Kenya, and they'll be learning some words like jambo, which is hello, I guess. I hope I didn't get that wrong, because, you know, there's no editing in this thing. This is all, it's live, and then we have to take the whole thing and record it when we record it to YouTube to archive it. But I just want to let the viewers know that we're going to have that coming out of the Elmwood. And it's always it's a great time. They come into rock and roll music and they dance around and they do hand slaps with the kids and they do a circle around, and then they're seated and there's a presentation. So, and there's some people in there that really get the kids going. You know, with they get them very excited, and it's a great time. The one we're looking at right now, I think if you had turned your camera to the right, you would have seen my entourage.
You were there in the street.
I was in this. Well, I wasn't on the street because they'll knock you in the head for that. But
Yep.
I was. I think it was
On the island,
this year.
Yep.
I was on the sidewalk to the right as we
okay.
look,
Yep.
and I was there with my nephew and with an employee, and we were doing video and we were doing photos, a lot of them, and it's always a great time. It's such a letdown to see them all leave. Come on back and party. We want to talk to you.
Well, the
people.
world comes to Hopkinton, and it certainly is a world-class event right in our little downtown. The next photo is the most photographed place in New England. This is motif number 1 up in Rockport, which in itself is beautiful. You've got the lobster buoys against the red background. I was up there last year and just happened to see a lobsterman getting ready to go out, so I thought we'd add another element of New England to a place that is very, very historic and well known worldwide. So that is motif number 1. One of the other treasures that we have in the very next frame.
You know, before you go, I just wanted to point out that I have some family that grew up in Maine and had well, it's what do you call it? It's not well, except for my son. It's not blood family that had the lobster boats, but they really it's really a hard life.
It's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah, it really is. And
you're out in all kinds of weather, and you're restricted in the size and how much you can catch.
And I thought that was Roger Mezzet's bond when it first came up, but it's not.
Yeah, no,
so we shout out to Roger Mezet.
Yep. Hello, Roger.
And Marilyn Mezet and my son Sean. How are you all? And the people in Stonington and the people on the new Legacy Farms Road North. So.
Absolutely.
But this next one, is that the Constitution?
That is our very famous, based in Charlestown, Massachusetts, over 200-year-old U.S. Constitution, which is currently in dry dock for a multi-million-dollar refitting. But this photo is it under sail for the first time in Boston Harbor in 100 years. This was a few years back. The Navy Blue Angels came to join the celebration. And I included this because it is an icon in New England and around the world. and it's right here for us to see and enjoy. And every 4th of July, Diane and I book passage on one of the Boston Harbor cruise boats that will shadow the tugboats as they take the Constitution out to Castle Island.
Don't they turn it around once a year?
So it weathers on the opposite
Yeah,
side.
that's fantastic.
So it will be coming out of dry dock for us in about a year in 2018.
And I see the next shot is from the TV show Gunsmoke.
This is not from Gunsmoke
No, okay.
or Bonanza.
All right.
When John Wayne is
Sorry.
not in this picture, but this is one I shared with you that made the Old Sturbridge Village calendar this year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, they were kind enough to pick this for the month of October. And this is my friend George and his team of horses pulling their Worcester stagecoach past the tavern at Old Sturbridge Village. And closing on that note, another New England scene, Old Sturbridge Village celebrates 17th and 18th century life in New England.
Well, you know, it's been a great presentation.
Thank you very much.
We are going back to the two-shot. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
You were wondering where we were. We were in the sound booth all this time. That's it, right? The sound booth narrating this. Actually, we were sitting here the entire time enjoying it. Hopefully, as much as you did, because John's got some great photos from around the world. Some great action shots. I like that wildebeest jumping into the water, and the fellow on the I guess he was on a kite, the one that was turned and cut that huge diagonal into the photo, and just so many of them. So we thank you, and
You're very welcome.
And we thank the audience for checking us out. And you know, before I forget, the Hopkinton High School Press.org has a new issue. You can pick up the printed issue, I believe, at the entrance to the school, and or you can look it online at hhspress.org. I'd like to thank Eric for doing such a great job with the presentation and using his skills and his intuition to make this a very smooth show. And thank John very much.
Thank you very much,
for
Robert.
coming by and sharing all
Appreciate
that
it. And
with our readers.
best to everyone.
Good night, everyone.